We thought that was
Both Facebook and this thing is live?
We are. We're ready.
Oh,
We're on.
all right. What's up, YouTube? And Facebook, I think, is back.
Yeah,
Dave, is it
Facebook.
working? I don't know. All right, well, hopefully it is.
Facebook, good to see you.
All right, so yeah, we'll do them both again. We bought a new computer. Up our game. All right, so today was plumbing.
Not today.
Well,
the whole
week.
week and weekend was plumbing.
Like, so you probably, if you've been following like Facebook channels and whatnot,
Yeah.
you probably have already seen how it came together. But
pretty
you get to
awesome.
see the journey and all the challenges that we ran into, as well as the solutions. Some of the things that we just changed our mind on, like mid-scope, and I guess you just get to see the whole thing.
Firing from the hip. But
Yeah.
it turned out really awesome.
Okay, that is one of the things I learned for sure last week is, man, when you're running 100 miles an hour, you make some missteps for sure.
Understandably.
Yeah, right on.
Well, but then you get back into that, that George Patton quote, and like you could have been planning this up until September, November this year before you finally executed, but now you got water in the tank, so.
You know what? Actually, some people said this in some of the comments too, which was like, this is definitely a violently executed plan.
Oh, violently.
Plan done today is better than a great plan next week.
Yeah.
And I very much feel like they said you're giving me inspiration to get past and hurdles in my own build. And absolutely, the thing is now leak tested. It's got fresh water running in it to make sure there's no leaks and everything. All the plumbing done. I feel like I got past a major barrier that was holding me back.
Yeah.
Just like, we're gonna get her done. That's it. And just brute force, and we're gonna get to the other side of this. And now I can take more precise things on very specific angles of it because the lion's share of it is
guts
together.
Yeah.
Right.
The heart, the guts, everything is there. It's got water running. Now we can start to, there's so much more to do. Lights and pumps and all kinds of corals.
Like 30 episodes at least. All right, so just a little update. So we got tons of photos here that we're gonna go through and I'll show you everything. So first one is from last week actually. So, this is where we actually ended up. So if you haven't seen this, where we ended up, this is what it looks like right now.
We're gonna walk you to how we got there.
Yeah, so we're gonna walk all through today, how it's supposed to look like this. It's clean. Clean is synonymous with safe in most cases.
Yeah. It looks simple. I see 7 pipes here, maybe?
There's 7 total lines. None of them are crossing over or under each other visibly and totally out of the way. You probably can only see 6 at the moment. But we're going to show you exactly how that came together. But starting now with last week, actually, this was a really good one. So you can see there up in the upper right-hand corner is an outlet that we turned to face down in the wall and then we covered it up with PVC. And so wrong answer. So the one thing I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah.
I am not an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
And I'm not many things. I'd like to think of myself as a good reef tank owner, but there's so many skills that come into this.
Yeah.
And especially when you're going fast and furious.
Oh yeah.
So,
So far we've done electrical, we've done plumbing, we've done basically like drywalling, but with different type of material. Measuring, cutting, you got new tools, you got all kinds of stuff. So you kind of got to be this everyday handyman to get it done.
Yeah, so here's the deal. The beauty of this is the community backs you up. Sometimes it's super annoying. Sometimes it's the right thing, and no matter how annoying it is, you want to hear it because it's going to progress your hobby for you. And if you just like suck it up for a moment, like, they're right, you should do it this way. So immediately, this is one of those cases where I didn't even have to suck it up. I saw what they were talking about. Yeah. In fact, I walked out of the live and Charlie's like, "You idiot." He didn't really say that, but basically he's like, "Dude, that you can't put the outlet in the wall that way." And there's one very specific reason. We'll get into a bunch of it next week actually when we redo the electrical. But if you put the plug in that way, we were thinking like, oh, it's a built-in drip loop.
There you go.
Here's the problem is over time that little outlet will wiggle out and eventually when it wiggles out too far it'll arc and it can start a fire in your wall where you'd never see it. All kinds of different problems.
And that's the point why you can't hide it.
I hear it out loud and like, that was absolutely stupid.
How are you going to see it?
Yeah. So we're going to solve that problem, and I think many cases the best thing that you could ever see out of us is our mistakes. Show them loud and proud and as public as possible because those are the things you're like, oh, I was going to do it that way, but I would never do that now. That was crazy. So you can see that. And then what was the next one in here? Oh, also, I thought that we were going to leave the bottom open so we could access those panels and send wires and stuff up it. And we were absolutely not going to do that now. So I covered them up. I want to make sure that both the outlet that was down there was covered up. You can go back to that one, actually. That there was an outlet on the other side of the wall I wanted to cover up. Also, all the wood and everything. There isn't really a whole lot of chance for a lot of splashing back there. I just want to eliminate it.
But yeah, just in case, why not?
So I'll probably route out a couple holes, and you'll see in just a minute how I'll do that. But like we decided to cover it up. All right, and then I did cut another panel, and you can see that in the next thing here. I cut a panel out above the plumbing so we can get to the electrical.
Yeah, this was one sheet, an 80-inch sheet, from top to bottom, along with the rest. But now that we have to move the panels to get to the electrical, I had to cut across the bottom right there above the pipe because the pipe's fixed now. I mean, there's no moving that pipe. So accessing behind it, not gonna happen.
So last week, let's move on. So the first thing we needed to do is get a stand here. I got news for you. The stand didn't come in time. So thank you, Kyle Elder, by the way. Exceeded expectations on every front possible. It always does, actually.
Yeah.
But the shipping company got it to us late. So because I had my friend Jeremy come down from Brightwell, he actually drove all the way from San Francisco here to help out build this. And normally I would just wait for the stand. But in this case, he's coming out. We just got to do something. So we built a temporary stand here, and that's Jeremy there.
So the challenge here is Kyle Elder's building you a very specific sized stand for this, and now what you're going to try to do is replicate that as close as possible so that when his stand comes, the plumbing's already done. You got to get the plumbing done. So when the stand comes, it fits perfectly, and it comes down to like a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so there's two things to that. It actually did come down to a 1/16 of an inch. There was a solution to that we found. But yeah, and so there was two things here. It actually came up, there's like a little lip on where the boxes of the back of the sump go, and that was what the issue became later on. But you need to, have all the plumbing connect at the right things. And a 1/4 inch one way or another, it actually matters. Throws it way off,
Yeah, so we just did our best. We got it super, super close and built a crappy little 2x4 stand as fast as we could. It is not designed to hold weight here. It was designed to hold an empty sump. So I just wanted to build something as fast as we possibly could. And so don't use that as a design for yourself in the future. This is not for that. All right, so we built that thing out. What's the next sheet? Okay, so you can see it there. And it's actually funny because as soon as I showed this, I think you can probably see it in the next photo where it's in place. A friend of mine, or somebody on the Facebook's like, man, you spent like all this money on a tank and a stand and whatever, and then a $20 stand. I'm checking out. I'm over. Now, you can see in this video,
it's temporary.
You can. Yeah. This is how close the tolerances are. Maybe you can start that one over again. You can barely even close the door. Yeah. This is what we're dealing with. I got like maybe 3/8 of an inch to be able to close and open that door.
Here he comes.
Okay, so here's starting over again.
So Kyle's built it exactly the same, so that look how close that is.
Yeah, actually, Kyle told me though, he's like, I'm not even a 1/2 inch over because I put this front thing on the front, front of it, so I'm not sure. I'm like, oh man, dude, a 1/2 inch matters here, dude.
Yeah, and it worked out perfectly.
It worked out perfect. It wasn't a big deal. All right, so now we're gonna plumb.
Temporary stand is in place. Now you can start plumbing, and you can trust that the stand is going to be there, and it's going to be the exact measurement when the plumbing goes in.
So this is where the hard lessons come in, right? So there's best practices out there, and then you debate, and trust me, man, there was 4 days of debate in here. So then you adapt, you deal with the circumstances you're actually in, and then you make the best available options for yourself. So
and somebody hit it right here too on this comment. John Kidd, he says, no unions?
Yeah, we're hitting it right now. So you're going to look at it right now. So I hope we can show that up. So you'll see no unions. And there is 2 reasons for that. One, we're doing with super tight tolerances here. You can see that there wouldn't be any room for the unions to be, if I put them in there, the pipes would have to come farther apart from each other.
Yeah, they're bulky, so you're not going to get this nice, slim, 1/2 an inch between each pipe. They have to come off the wall further, which means you're going to have to put some 45s in to route them back towards the wall and get to the drains. And then it just starts to look wonky.
Okay, so there's two reasons. Like, so you could say aesthetics, but it actually wasn't that.
Yeah.
It does look nicer when you run them right next to each other. But in this case, I couldn't get them off the wall and get the angles right coming out of the sump. I can't move the sump out because the door won't close.
Yep.
And I can't. I need them to be this close to each other because they need to go back up into the overflow box on the other side of the wall. And if we spaced them far enough for unions, they just wouldn't go.
Yeah.
So, end of the day, no unions. And it's funny because the next frame here is back in 2011, I would have told you that the #1 rule is a beginner puts in like 1 or 2 unions, then an intermediate person, intermediate person comes and puts in like 4 unions, and then a pro will have them everywhere. And I'm like, oh man, like in my dream system, I've gone backwards.
Well, and I think in our just 2 weeks ago, we did a plumbing mistakes, and in that plumbing mistakes, one of them was unions, not using enough.
Yeah, okay, but again, you have to take the application of knowledge and apply it to the circumstances you're in and make the best decisions possible, and I'm absolutely certain we did that. All right, so next one here is, all right, the stand did show up after we got some of the plumbing routed. And I think it exceeded all of our expectations when we opened it up.
So awesome.
This is a form matching function here, and like the Royal Exclusive people were nice enough to send us over like vector files so we could print or create the 3D CAD designs to be able to make this.
And the cool part here is that like you can see Russ removing the side there. The sides have panels, and the front right here is a removable panel. Yeah,
they come off. So maybe we can see the next shot here. This is made out of 16-layer marine grade plywood.
Look at that.
Kyle,
super light.
Yeah, so by the way, Kyle's company is called Adaptive Reefs, so if you're interested, you can reach out to him. But Kyle used marine grade plywood. They actually make boats out of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's made for the actual application.
Sturdy as could be.
Well, so when I first saw this too, I didn't see, I saw all the holes and I wasn't really sure. And now it's blatantly apparent, this is where all the cords are going.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Not just through the back of this, but I'm going to be able to run all the cords through every single supportive panel.
Yep.
And I think you can see immediately that this thing is built to withstand time, as well as obviously the weight.
The weight, yeah.
And even has some of the finer touches. If you can go to the next frame here.
Look at this.
Every single panel has a little Mr. Chili routed into it, which is near and dear to my heart, for sure.
Even the removable white panels on the sides have a big embossed Mr. Chili in it. It's really cool.
Yeah, so next one here. All right, so we carried it into the house. It was actually much less, it wasn't nearly as heavy as you would think it would be.
No, about as light as your 2x4 stand.
Yeah, my $20 stand. Yeah, so I don't know. Then get it into place, and this is what it looks like. So this is where, like, when we put it in place the first time, like, man, this is where the dream is starting to come true.
Yeah.
Like, am I like, man, actually, what this is doing is upping the game. This is upping the standards now. Like, the whole room needs to match this level of quality.
Right.
And if it does, then where are we going? What's the end result of this if the whole room is going to match that standard of quality?
Yeah.
I've never been more excited about anything in my life other than my kids. I don't know. Like, I'm blown away now.
The sink is upgraded. The sump. Look how nice. Everything's LED backlit. What's left that's got to go in here?
I know. You're not going to put
you're not going to put like a garbage can mixing bin in here because that doesn't match the form and function here.
I know. Like every single. It's like that guy that said you bought all this stuff and you put a $20 stand. Like, you shamed me into submission. No, like I don't know. I naturally want to, and so me and Kyle now are talking to each other every day, and like, man, okay, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And so it's just gonna make it better and better each time. So super excited about that. So now it's time to do the hard plumbing, and this is the one thing I think you're gonna really the theme that should come across when you see plumbing. If it looks easy, it was actually hard.
Super hard.
Yeah. If it looks hard, it was probably easy.
Yeah.
Right? If it's hard and there's like a snake of pipe all over the place, you're like, how did you plumb all of that stuff? It's so much stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that looks hard because you can see all the complexity.
Yeah.
If you took something complex and make it really clean and simple, That's where the complexity really is. And so when my wife asked me how long are you going to take to do this, she like, oh, I don't know, he's coming on Friday. Well, maybe we'll be done the same day.
Yeah. Nope.
No, we finished on Tuesday, and he was there every day, and we were going to midnight.
Yeah.
And if you see the
days.
end result, you would say, how could you spend that much time on it? And you'll see as we go through here how hard it was. But this is kind of like, for me, a little bit of the inspiration of what it should look like. These were the ULMs. And so this was actually a plumbing job I was pretty proud of.
Best plumbing that we've ever seen in this building.
Yeah, and so you'll see a lot of 45s, because 45s, two of them together can make compound angles. You just can't make any other way. But it's super slick, it's sleek, it's nice, it's safe, and it's really looks simple, which means that it actually wasn't. Specifically,
Yeah, that UV sterilizer.
yeah, the one on the right there, which has a sterilizer, we took a whole day just on that one alone because it was so hard to figure out how to get water in the top, water out the back, have the valves, be able to maintenance it, be able to get the bulb out, all the nonsense, and yet it came across real clean. So let's start. All right, so here's the next the beginning of this. So we're drilling through the wall. By the way, there's two walls here, so we have to get this straight. There's the expanded PVC wall on this side, and then there is the drywall on the other side, and it has to be straight. And so we drilled the hole here, and you can see the next one. And then we poked another hole through with a long drill bit. You can see that little drill bit sticking out there, right? And you can see the other pipes we have already made. But I'll walk over to the other side, and you can see that he's holding that bit right in there.
Dead center of the hole there.
Yeah, and there's no way around it. You can measure, and we did, but like you also just kind of have to eye up that it's square, you know, with the wall at some point. You just have to make it best. And granted, I mean, we've done it. Both of us done this before a lot, so we were able to do a good guess pretty easy. But the next one here is us going through the wall.
Okay, here it comes.
So the goal is to be right on the top of that tape, and we're eyeing that up.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Didn't even move the tape.
I joked and told him that he failed and went through the tape. But, no, it was perfect. I mean, you know, so to eye it up, and we're just measuring using measuring tape
from the wall, from the floor, right?
Yep, on both sides, and it worked out perfect. So none of those holes came out. They all went as anticipated. So just using a hole saw, then using a long drill bit to make a pilot hole for the next hole saw, and then using an extension bit that we had on there to make the hole saw go through the next one.
But and therein lies the whole why it took so long is because you have to plan for these very specific, very precise, you know, measurements and cuts and measurements. Because you only get one time to do it.
Measure 4 or 5 times. Yeah. And then second guess yourself is really what it is too, because there's several places where like you catch yourself like, oh man, I'm so glad I didn't cut that hole. Yeah. Because that would have been a terrible thing. Yeah. So, but we got all the holes in. It was pretty good. And then the big problem. Oh, that's what 3 holes looks. Doesn't look super complex.
No,
it was
clean.
To get those holes in the right places and then glue it on the wrong side and get a leak-free glue joint going into those things is actually difficult. But this isn't tremendously difficult. This is where it gets harder for us. Is these stupid UVs.
These things are monstrous too. I mean, these really don't show how
it's hard
big these
to.
are.
I told him to hold that first one out like a bass. You know, so you can see
it looks as big as him.
But if you've seen the BRS 160, then you've probably already seen this thing. It is, you know, this big, and it's this big around, and not only that, but it has to have this much room on the top to be able to pull the bulb out the top when you need to maintenance it. It's going to have a flow meter on it that's 2 feet long, and I guess it's probably only a foot.
It's about a foot and a half,
and then with unions on it, it's got to have a ball valve in it, and because it's a closed loop in this case, we have 5 ball valves to be able to shut off the water at any given point, so it doesn't drain water into the house if you're doing any kind of maintenance.
It quickly doubles or triples the size of this, just the UV sterilizer alone.
Yeah, and so I don't think I have a shot of it here, but you've probably seen it already, most of you watching. There's 2 closed loopholes in the middle of the tank. So if this thing fails, man, half of the water in the tank's going on my floor. It cannot fail, right? And so we really had to think this one out and make sure that it's routed. And again, we want it to look clean as well. We don't look like a big rat's nest of stuff. So I think we got a few videos of how we did it here. And I can show you like the contraption that we built. If you can go back, Dave. So,
okay.
Yeah, okay, so there's 2 UVs here. So this is just a normal UV. For most people, you're just gonna run it off of your return pump. It'll go back into the sump. In this case, you can just think about it as off your return pump.
Yeah.
Everybody plugs it in the bottom, comes out the top. All right, and then if you want to do a more closed loop, this is kind of a pond diagram, but this will show you like a little bit of mentality of how you would do a closed loop. In this case, I am
doing one of each.
Yeah, I'm doing one of each, and this is why. So some of you may have be wondering why two UVs, and a lot of you probably already heard it, so I'm not going to dwell on it too long. But there's 2 distinct purposes for these things, and they run totally different, and there's very distinct reasons why.
Yep.
So one is designed to, like eliminate algae, meaning that it doesn't populate in my glass as much, meaning that it won't grow on the rocks as much. It also will prevent bacterials, dinos, and cyano. You won't necessarily treat like cyano that's grown on rocks already, but you're just keeping the population of that stuff all down. There's all kinds of bacterial pests and stuff. And this is a true area where an ounce of prevention is worth like 100 pounds of cure. Nobody likes going and dealing with that stuff after the fact. I'd like to just never even think about it and just solve it beforehand. And in this case, the problem is those types of organisms can like replicate themselves in a matter of minutes to hours.
Oh yeah.
Right? So like you have to have a really high flow rate and the appropriate amount of UV. In this case, it's somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 gallons an hour that needs to go through a tank my size.
Which is faster than what you want as total tank turnover through your sump.
I don't want 2,000 gallons an hour going through my sump.
That's
it's going to be super loud. It's going to mess with the filter array or the the filter sock or not sock, the fleece filter that I have in there, and I just don't want 2,000 gallons an hour going through there. So we're going to do it differently, and I'm going to have a closed loop. I'm going to suck out of one end and pump out the other. And in this case, I'm really going to be processing the tank and the water, and I don't have all the filtration. Now, in an ideal world, sometimes you would say that it's best to have like a filter sock pulling out some of the gunk so it doesn't end up in there. But at 2,000 gallons an hour, I'm pretty certain this thing is going to stay like pretty free of most gunk. But we'll find out, and I'll share with you guys in real time how this actually works out. Now, the other one is super simple. You know, it's just for the fish. You know, you're trying to keep parasite levels in your tank down. If you haven't perfectly quarantined your fish, you probably have these parasites in your tank. If you haven't noticed them, it's probably because they're at really low populations. The fish are generally healthy and able to fight them off. However, you're like one, downturn, like one, power outage where it gets cold, one overdose of something. So many stress before the immune system goes down, they start building up, and what happens then is they fall off the fish, replicate themselves in the water, and then they have to go back and find the fish.
Free swim,
But if you're processing all that water, well, then the free swimming mode, you're keeping the population of these parasites down, right? I think I'm not going to have these parasites in there because I'm going to use Elliot over at Marine Collectors for my source. And somebody challenged me the other day about whether or not I have a quarantine in my house. And I'm getting kind of tempted to not necessarily get them all from Elliot, but have Elliot help me source them and then show me how to quarantine them myself at my house so I can show you guys. And I feel like that might be more valuable to you.
Plus not a bad idea to have that type of system for like a hospital tank if something, you need to pull a fish out or what have you.
Just knowledge, man. Evolution of knowledge and the hobby. So I may just do that. I'm going to have to talk to Elliot about how that would work out, but we'll see how that comes together. But even if I do it perfectly, there's no such thing as perfect in reefing. So these are my pets. I want to care for them for 20 years, and I want to name one Jerry or whatever and have it grow up with my kids. So the UV is like a super simple, easy way to help, increase those chances.
And so that second UV, because it's a slower flow rate, that sort of matches what your turnover is in the tank. You can just plumb that straight off of the return.
I'll just plumb it right up the return and set the flow rate right. And in this case, I don't need all those valves. I don't need ball valves because when I turn it off, it just drains into the sump. It's super easy to access. And you'll see that here, actually. There's a video of us installing it. But anybody could do this one. It's super easy. And in fact, if in a smaller tank, you could actually do the high flow version one as well because the turnover in a smaller tank is not as big of a deal. And the UVs are smaller. And so you might be even able able to do the pest flow rate in a smaller tank through your return on a smaller tank.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's see it installed. This shot's a little long, but you can see here that, oh, this is the install of actually the closed loop one.
Okay.
And so you're going to see down here, this is where our 7th line is, and we're going to put a ball valve on there. Oops, I don't know if this is the one. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
It looks like, yep, there it is.
So it's coming right down from the floor. So you dropped off of that.
Oh, there's through the floor. They got 2 ball valves down there. So again, we want to make sure that there's like any time I need a maintenance, I can turn off the water and be able to access any part without a bunch of water coming out. And all right, so we're attaching that thing, and maybe you can hit to the next video. All right, so that's what it looks like, the apparatus when we built it together.
So that U shape on the bottom kind of seems weird, but you're coming straight out of the top of a pump.
Yeah, it's coming out of the top of that Ep5 pump.
Everything's external here.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know, I was really looking at a variety of different pumps that we could use for this thing. And ultimately, I don't want to have to maintenance it. I want to maintenance as little as possible because it's kind of in a hard area. We've made every effort to make it accessible, and it is accessible. It's just not that I want to, right? And so the Ep5 and the 10-year warranty and our experience with them here require very little maintenance. And I'm going to tell you later on that I can't even hear it's on.
Yeah, it's quiet.
Yeah, and that was a big deal for me, is making sure that it's dead silent. And also it's Apex ready, so I can plug it into the Apex and control both the flow rate as well as use the flow sensor to know what the flow rate is. And so it was just an obvious choice for that, even though it's not the cheapest pump in the universe. But like in the case, I want to, it has a purpose, and I want to make sure that I'm maintaining it right.
And you made the point in the 750 XXL, and when we were doing the BRS WWC series, that as far as simple and stable but redundant and safe, also going with the Ep5 pump that has the longevity, that has, you pay for what you get, and that pump can last,
Well, it's a mentality thing too, because like when I set up my first tank, I don't know, I'm just setting up a tank. I'm not thinking about like what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. In this case, I'm setting up my dream tank, and this tank is going to be around for 15 years. I want to think about totally different different things or aspects of how I'm going to set this up, because I don't want to go back and look at this like I messed it up. I'm sure I will. I'm sure you'll see it publicly.
There'll be something.
And hopefully learn something from it as well. But I want to avoid as much of that as humanly possible. So next shot here. So this is, I think, what it looks like when it's actually in place. So you can see the water's coming up, it goes back down, and then it comes out the top and goes out back to the tank. So
you got a ball valve before the pump, for the pump inlet. You got a ball valve at the pump outlet that goes into the UV. Then a ball valve on the output of the UV, and then 2 on the other side too. Yeah,
and later on you'll see a flow sensor end up in the top here. So let's see the next one here. And so to cut these things, this is actually was Jeremy pushing me. So for me, I'm often looking for the clean, or the most reliable way to do something. And Jeremy was really pushing me to make it more aesthetically pleasing as well. And so if you go back to this shot here in the beginning, you'll see that all these lines are going to come straight out from each other. So
they all those butt up right up in front of each other.
Yeah, so they're all following each other's lines. And I will be honest, man, that is one of the things that made it super complex to do, because you can't have all these lines that want to cross each other over, under, around each other. And they do on the other side. But to have it come, all linear like that was actually a really big challenge. So what's the next video here? And it was a really big challenge to make it both clean aesthetically as well. So in this case, again, we're just drilling both of those holes to get through there. And you can see these 90s actually kind of like go through the wall. It had to be so close. And we're just eyeing it up, doing our best. And I think in the next video, you can see these things coming through. Okay, and that was actually where it installed too.
Yeah, the bottom of the UV, the recirculating one.
Yep. All right, okay, I think you can just jump ahead a couple to these. And so the whole thing assembles together. There's ball valves on everything. And make sure when you're using those ball valves that there's a little key in there. You don't have to go back to it, Dave. There's a little key in there that makes you, so you want that accessible when you take it apart so you can tighten down the valves. Again, if you're doing this for 2 years, nobody cares. If you're doing it for 15, they want to be able to tighten the valve.
Yeah.
And you got to be real careful with these coarse sleeves when you're installing them. So make sure you read the instructions and everything. All right. So this guy's in place. There's a little paper towel coming out of the top because they call it a paper towel test.
But you see the 2 little angle brackets right there too. Those will come into play here in a bit.
Yeah, those brackets will be part of the next one actually. But there's that paper towel there to make sure that the coarse sleeve has not soaked up or is not leaking.
Yeah.
And then the next one here. All right, there's our
the flow meter.
Flow meter, that's a Neptune flow meter, so we'll be able to actually measure how much flow is in here, especially in a closed loop environment. There aren't many ways to be able to measure, you'd just be guessing. And big thing with UV is actually installing it correctly to do its job, so I call this a necessity.
This is something that you have to plan for, you know, I mean, look at the extra height that you have to plan. 2 unions in the flow sensor plus the
that couldn't just go anywhere.
No.
This was like the only place in the room that could go without being just a giant eyesore hanging off the wall. And it's going to be 50, 60 pounds once it's full of water too. So, you know, it also had to support some weight. And in this case, it doesn't because it's on the floor. And we're using wall mounts. You can see those plastic clips there to support a lot of the weight. And here's an interesting one. We use this flopper style check valve. And this is again a convenience thing. It actually isn't there to like protect water. It's just if I unplug it, I just want as little water to come out there as humanly possible. And I never use these floppers, and I'm going to give you a little feedback on them. We used it in this case because it fit. It was the only option that was going to fit. If I tried to put 2 unions and a George Fisher Y one, it wasn't going to fit with this other solution we're putting in. So it was just a convenience factor. I said, you know, put the flopper guy in there. And it works, but I'm going to tell you right now that it has a slow drip. So whereas the George Fisher ones for me like seal all the way every single time. You can hear them jam when they go down. I was kind of feeling like maybe I was just being nitpicky by always using those George Fisher ones.
But even brand new, this one.
Brand new out of the box, it was leaking.
It closes the valve and it leaks a little bit.
And actually, when it didn't have a lot of water on the top pushing down the flapper, it actually leaked pretty good. And these are Spears ones. These aren't like those generic cheap ones. We got the nice Spears one. So it had a little bit of a leak when there was no water, and then when I opened up the valve and gave real pressure, it went down to almost nothing, but there was still like a little bit. And so, I don't know, not my favorite thing. But it was just the space that we had and a convenience factor. So, like, I want the thing for convenience, and I just had to pick the one that fits. And so that was what it was. All right, so next, the one thing I will say about this thing is if you can go back, actually, that video right before it, my intent here is also that I'm going to swap out that piece because every year.
You said this design hasn't really changed for like the past 10 years, so the unions can stay in place. All you have to do is buy a new one and swap out the middle piece.
Yeah, so the Spears has been around for forever. So what I'll be able to do with this valve isn't particularly expensive, and so what we'll be able to do is just as maintenance. I can't really clean the flopper ones like you can with the George Fisher ones. So I will just take it out and replace
put a new one in.
I don't know. It's probably cost $20 a year to just replace and throw and get a new one. All right, so I'll probably do that. I'm gonna probably have a whole laundry list of yearly things I need to do. I guess that will be one of them.
But that one's not mission critical to the life support of the system. So
never use a check valve anywhere where it has to work.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no place we used them where it has to work. It's just convenience. All right, so in relation to that, what's the next video here? All right, so we did have ball valves on the return though. So
this is UV sterilizer, recirculating one. So you have a ball valve here and a ball valve on the other side.
The closed lap, I got ball valves on both sides. So we can turn water off. And if we need to maintenance it, I don't want the whole tank draining all over my floor because it is at the halfway point of the tank. So this is one thing you're going to notice, and this is a debate that we had on hashtag AskBeersTV the other day, is ABS bulkheads. You can see it right there. It's like a pain in my side. I just so sad about it, but I'm also not. It was an informed decision. So if we look at this,
the next one.
Next one here is,
look at that.
It's about aesthetics, and so you can see one, the ABS thing is so low profile, and it's black. It's in the
hides back there.
You'll never even see it. Whereas this the industrial strength guy is huge, and
there's no way
I couldn't do it.
That.
So here's the thing. I was debating this thing with Felix at Reef Savvy, actually, and I'm like, no, you got to drill for a Schedule 80, dude.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, they're such an eyesore. How can you do that? I'm like, yeah, but I need like heavy duty. He's like, man, I've never actually seen these things break, you know.
Yeah.
So like, I know people talk about it and it happens on occasion, but it looks so much better. And we debated. I'm like, I'll fine. I'll relent to the guy that's actually making the tank, right?
The only time I've ever seen the ABS one break is by over tightening the retaining nut and it cracking. That's the only time that I've ever seen it break.
Yep.
And if I'm not cranking on it, it'll last forever.
Actually, the other thing I was thinking is if you have female threads inside of it, they should actually just outlaw this for purposes.
Just make it slip.
Yeah, or know what you're doing at least, because what happens is those threads, the male thread that goes in the female hole is got a taper to it.
Yep.
And so when you're spinning it in there, it's getting wider and wider, and there's a seam on the ABS that will pop open at some point, so you're putting pressure on it. I would never have used that for sure. I wouldn't use them in any case at all. And there's threads on the other side, but I would just loosely fit in a strainer. I'm not trying to like get it watertight or whatnot. So in the end, though, Jeremy comes to the house, looks at it and says, "You guys are using ABS. What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I just had this debate already." Ended up and like, okay, well, we can go get the Schedule 80 ones and see if they fit. Maybe we can downscale the pipe, because I agree. And we did it. And then go back to that picture.
It looks horrendous.
We took one look at it and said, no way.
No way.
No
There's
way.
no way.
Yeah, and so even Jeremy, like, I won't let you do that after you see it. So I don't know. Everybody is going to have a different opinion on this, form versus function, and I'm sure there's a debate going on in the like comments at the moment.
Yeah.
But like, it just is what it is, man, and you got to make a decision for yourself on what you can tolerate. And all right, so what's the next one? Is the next UV here. So this one was so simple. There's a little stand there, and we just put it in.
Yep, there it is.
This one made the other one
look
like
your second return line comes in.
Yeah, so the return line, you just screw it right on. I mean, obviously, we had to get the angles and everything right.
Yeah, but done.
Yeah, and then the top is about the same. We're going to put in a flow meter again, coming out of the top for the Neptune flow meter that we'll be able to monitor, so we can get it right for the parasites on the fish and make sure we get the contact time that we need. But it's really, this one actually easy. I wish we could like fast forward these things, because they're drawing on a little bit. Maybe I'll cut them next time. But yeah, so there is anyway. Okay, so that's the finish on the other side. We do have check valves here as well. And so. But again,
not for the purposes of.
If you can go to that check valve, actually, this is the reason that this is here. These are the George Fisher ones, a little Y style.
Yep.
And the only reason that's there is to keep an extra inch of water in the tank while I'm doing maintenance and the pump's turned off.
Yeah.
The sump will actually hold all the water, no problem. It's just that if I can, I'd like to keep that inch of water in the tank, keeps the corals submerged. It keeps like the skimmer isn't like going crazy because the water's like up to the absolute top of the sump. It's just a total ease of use thing.
And it's kind of like the drain in the BRS 160 is you've got corals that are right up on the edge of the top of the water. If you can save an inch of water from getting dropped down, that might save some time that they're exposed to the air.
Even when those types of check valves fail, they generally leak like really slow. Yeah. It's not like catastrophic. Sometimes they'll get stuck all the way open, but that's because you probably didn't maintenance it ever a day in your life. But like most of the time, it's just a tiny leak, and a little bit of water will go around it. It still serves the purpose that I'm using it for.
Right.
But like people will say all the time, don't use them in scenarios where you absolutely need to have them.
They'll fail.
Yeah, and actually, if you can go back to that first bulkhead photo, you'll see we did another thing here, I think. It's not in that photo. We actually used an adductor, and I don't know if there's a photo of that anywhere.
You can kind of see it on the side of that check valve.
Yeah, right up hand corner.
There you go. You can see it. I can see it here.
So the adductor is in there, and that's a long conversation about what they do. But basically, they increase flow by shooting flow and sucking water in around it.
Yeah.
I didn't actually put it in there for that purpose. I did it just to make it look clean because the lock line and stuff is snaking all over the place isn't really what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And by putting that piece in there, and it was also 1 inch, by the way. The hole is 1 inch, so lock line only goes up to 3/4 inch.
You'd have to,
I'd have to like reduce it, and I just didn't want to do that. So, and I'd have to use a Schedule 80 fitting or something to get it down. Yeah. And so what I did, I used the adductor, and the adductor takes, instead of having the hole right here and the water line and the tank drain all the way there, it raises it up about 3/4 of an inch and adds another 3/4 inch of water. So making sure the sump might not have held everything in there. It'd be right in the edge if it had to go all the way to the bottom of that bulkhead.
Yeah.
So, but using a little tool to make sure it stays safe, and then a little bit of convenience as well. All right, next. All right, so this is Jeremy, particularly proud of his work.
It's water.
Right? And the back there is a big rat's nest or snake pit, but right behind him. But then I think he's also super proud of the next one. Because again, it looked really slick. We're done for the most part here, and it's all looks really, really clean.
That's solid.
So you can see though the snake pit on the other side, as clean as this is. I think in the next video you'll actually start to see a little bit. It's kind of hard to see back here because as hard as it is to see back there, imagine how hard it is to glue all of that.
I bet.
It was really, really hard.
Oh, yeah.
To make sure it got in there all the way every time.
Well, and you're only working from either through the wall or through this little access port on either side, because there is no other access back here.
Yeah, this is definitely a two-man job, by the way. One of them's got to hold it against a tank and hurt their hand, and the other one needs to push it through the other side, and so it's really difficult. And you can see from the other angle too, it's a pretty similar shot. But from the other side, all this plumbing in here had to get in there, and it had to be done in certain steps. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to go through the wall or be able to glue together. So it's all that planning that does it. But now you can see what the finished product looks like. And I got a few different shots of this, and you can just see how, again, man, it's just sleek, so all in here.
It looks simple, it looks clean, but now you see how complex it is.
Yeah, and all of it, man, I'm just really, really happy. And I'm going to say it right, like, if Jeremy didn't come out, it wouldn't look this nice.
No, because I can't help you do something like this.
He pushed me. He pushed me consistently, make it cooler, make it better.
Yeah.
And, one of the reasons he actually...
This is one of his favorite things to do.
Yeah, he actually did a job as a plumber.
Oh, yeah.
So he'd plumb like whole Petco's in other places. He said he was doing maintenance, and one of the guys was like, "You love doing this?" He's like, "I got a job for you." And he made a career out of doing it in the beginning.
That's awesome.
When he's like 20 years old. So he's been doing plumbing for tanks, and he just was super excited about it. So I like, man, but push the limits of making sure that it was done right, and it was a really, really hard midnight projects. And by the way, big kudos to my wife, because she tolerated this whole thing for 4 days. And then another one thing here we did, man, is again, we cut out that wall. And so right above it, now we have access to all the electrical, which is next week. You'll be able to see all that, so you can see that. And there's a few things here that we did also do. You can probably some tips that you would like to know about. Go ahead, next one. Oh, we turned on the pumps, actually. Leak testing, I forgot. We almost skipped all the water that goes in here. So this is where I learned the Abyss 200 makes no noise at all. Red Dragons, also no noise at all. So if you go into that sump room, there is no noise. You can't even hear it's on.
It was a big concern, because we were thinking, okay, now you've got this like ABS board that bounces sound off of it. You got this big hole in the floor that's wide open in there. We thought, you're just going to hear water. You're going to hear everything, pumps and humming.
If you saw the previous episodes, like there's a hole this big where we put a vent in.
Yeah.
And like, man, I'm for sure going to hear all this pump noise in here. You can't even hear it's on.
Hey, we even talked about putting some padding in between the vents just to reduce noise.
I had another solution for the wall, actually, to do sound dampening, and I'm gonna save that one. I may do it, but I may just skip it if it makes literally zero noise. So I'll shoot a little a demonstration of the noise, maybe tonight or later on this week, so you guys can hear. Like it makes. I've never heard a tank this quiet. Never, ever.
That's awesome.
So super cool. And then so we filled it up and leak tested it. And so that's what it looks like. We're just using softened water at this point because we wanted to do it quick, and I didn't want to wait for 306 or probably 400 gallons total in there, maybe more actually. It'd take days to fill, so don't want to wait for that. So then the next thing here is it leaked.
Yep.
It absolutely leaked.
Your leak test is probably going to show a leak.
Yeah, probably with this many things.
You can't get it right.
It was luckily just from threads. So there was 2 things here that leaked actually. So the first one was the nut on the Emperor or the Pentair Aquatics UV just wasn't tight enough. So we actually see a tool that we use to tighten it down later on, but you just had to crank that nut down. It just wasn't tight enough. And the other one was actually kind of annoying. It was the or the flow sensors from Neptune. Now, there aren't a lot of options on the market for this, and they're just trying to keep it affordable. So I don't know. There's a little bit of a trade-off here, but there's some room for improvement.
So the flow sensor has male threads on either end of it, and then unions on top of either side of those. But if you start to tighten one, you loosen something else.
A little bit, yeah. There's like their opposite of that, and there's unions. So when you go to crank the union, you actually end up spinning the threads on the flow sensor, and so both of them leaked. We rewrapped it, and they say actually use putty. I found out later, but we were able to rewrap it and get it leak-free. The first thing that came to my mind though is, can you solvent threads? And I would be really curious if somebody out in the audience here, like, if you guys know whether or not you could solvent threads, because I'd do that in a heartbeat if you could.
You'd have to use that like ABS PVC glue.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to be able to screw this off the sensor. There's no, like, I couldn't come up with any value to that other than maybe save a couple bucks on a union, and that is good enough for me. I want leak proof as much as possible. So
those unions that come with those are special unions because it's BSP to US.
Not the kind of thing you source on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, we were able to solve it, but there's 2 leaks, and we solved both of them probably inside of an hour after we identified them. And it was time then for a cleanup, and I got a few other tips here just in a second. But yeah, vacuum up and get the thing ready.
So you see Ryan vacuuming here, but what you didn't see was Jeremy did a lot of it too earlier.
I did the second pass, actually. Okay, so
there's a great.
There's a couple of things here that need to be done, and a couple of tips I thought I'll throw in here. So the first one is I needed a top for that overflow.
It's gonna splash. Might get a little loud, I don't know, but I mean that's one thing that you can stop from splashing. You can put something black on the top of there, easy. I think it's cool that you can that this glass you can see all the way through it.
Yeah, so I might hit up Felix for a glass top. I might make it myself. It's honestly out of sight. It's pretty easy. Well, I think you need to use not acrylic. Acrylic will warp from the moisture. But they're like polycarbonate would probably work. There's a variety of different materials we could put in there. But I'm gonna get a top there because it'll spray on the wall, and we learned here that
drywall does not hold up.
No, salt will just totally deteriorate the drywall. So they'll do that. And then next, I'm gonna say this is that tool we talked about for tightening any nut. So if you got a bulkhead you can't get to,
there you go.
I said we should go buy one for oil can, but apparently they make one.
Yeah,
this is made for plumbing.
For those of you who change your oil, you can get all kinds of different sizes of metal ones that are specifically made for filter sizes. But then you have this one, the belt pipe wrench or the belt wrench, and it works great. They actually make one for plumbing here. In this case, you can see it's a soft rubber. Works perfectly though.
Yeah, it gives you access to tighten things that you would not be able to tighten by hand or be able to get in there with. So check out that thing. It's probably only a handful of bucks.
Yeah, not
and
bad.
Then cool there is a couple more in here. And we're going to answer all you guys' questions. So if you've got questions right now, start letting them pile in.
You know where that thing would work pretty well? RODI canisters that are
difficult
to get
off. If you can't get your RODIF, that would be a great idea.
There you go.
So these Pike clamps here. I would say use them anytime you can. It removes all of the weight off of those things, and I screw them into a stud. But we actually use those like spiral pipe metal wall anchors.
Oh, yeah.
And in a couple of places, and I was really surprised how well it went into this expanded PVC.
Yeah, because you're not drilling into any sort of stud back here.
No, those are all studs.
Oh, are you going to a stud here?
Most of them we use on stud, but there was a couple places where we used it just to support the weight with that. And I was really surprised how well it works. I have zero faith in those things. I hate them. All I ever do is destroy my drywall with it.
Yep, that's true.
But with these, the expanded PVC, it actually worked really well. I wouldn't hang from it or anything, but it's way better than nothing. But go to the stud if you can. And note that if you use these, in most cases, it's too close to the wall for a ball valve or for unions. So right behind it, something like expanded half-inch expanded PVC.
Bump it out.
Bump it out. Just cut a little piece out, and you can actually build it out of the wall instead of screw through it, and it'll give you space for your unions and ball valves as well. And I mean, this is it. We're going to answer a bunch of questions now, that's what the final product looks like. Again, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, actually, Randy. You helped so much too, and thank you, Kyle Elder, because you guys are up in the game here. Actually, thank you, everybody that's involved. The stand is up the game from Chris Benner, Felix up the game on the tank. Everybody's up in the game here, and it's going to turn out to be something really cool.
Even the community who calls you out for your $20 stand.
You know what? The community, actually, thank you, because I mean, it's really painful sometimes. They're like, oh man, they hated that thing. But it makes you push harder to want something better, and they give you the skills to do it as well. So like I said, I'm not an electrical engineer.
No, but there are professional electrical engineers out there. There are professional plumbers out there who can give some solid advice. All
over. So this is that's the greatest thing about this hobby, is how the community is like a collective source of knowledge. So hey, maybe we can ring out a couple of these questions.
Yeah, we got a few questions here. Let's see. Fish Lives Matter asks, if I have a UV question, would I be okay to run UV on its own pump from the return section through the UVs and up to the tank? Essentially, a second return pump, but low flow.
Yeah, actually that's what's happening here is I have two return pumps.
Yeah.
And so one of them just goes straight to the return on the tank, and the other one goes to through the fish UV, right? And that allows me to control the flow rate through it to control the parasites for the fish, and the other one just goes whatever speed I want it to go at. And having two means that any one of my essentially hearts of my tank could go down, and I still got a connection between all of the life support and filtration between the tank and the sump by one of these two, and they're connected to two different returns. So, and again, on a 15-year timeline, like pumps are for sure going to break or jam or need maintenance, and so I don't want to wait for that to happen. I want to have it backed up. But that is the actually right way to do it, is or at least one of the easiest ways to do it.
Let's see. Travis asks, what with the closed loop UV pushing that much, what's the flow going to be like in the main?
Okay, so for me, most people live in a world where they were at 10x turnover, right? Yeah. And in case if it was 10x turnover, it's actually 3,000 gallons, right? There's no purpose for that.
To run through your sump. No,
we don't use flow. Nobody uses their return pumps for flow anymore.
No, and there's going to be some benefit in this, specifically in this closed loop one that he's asking about. There's going to be some flow, that adds into the tank, but a majority of your flow, that you're going to add into the tank is coming from MP60s or some other power heads and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
So it'll add a little bit, but you're not relying on that as your main display tank turnover.
So the turnover from the display tank to the sump, I bet you it's gonna be 3x.
Yep.
So the only thing I need to do going through that is I needed to filter out the excess particulates. I need to heat the water. I need to skim the water. I need to add whatever additives I'm adding into the sump that gets circulated through. There's only a handful of things that really need to happen, and they don't have to happen 10 times an hour every 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So if I can do it every 20 minutes, I'm probably good. And you'll probably know, does my heater solution work? Is the temperature in my sump and in my tank the same? If it is, that's a good turnover. Because the rest of it's probably working too then. And you may have something unique and you know it. You would already know if you have some super advanced, unique filtration in your sump that you decided to nerd out on it. But for most people, 3X is probably good and probably around where I'll shoot for. So in that case, it's probably about 1,000 gallons total. I think it'll be 350 going through the UV and like probably 600-ish going through the normal return.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Chrome Dog asked, is there a reason the door wasn't just open to the other, or open the other way?
That's the way it was built.
Yeah.
So if I could get a carpenter in here to flip the door, and I
kind of like the way it is now, because you open the door and I mean the whole, under the hood is right there, rather than open the door and then you walk in, then you have to close the door to get to your stuff.
Either way, man. And in the end, it didn't matter.
Come out.
In the end, it doesn't matter. Either way. But if you gave me my druthers, I probably would open it the other way. But I'd have to get a carpenter to come in and flip the door around. And it's like COVID world. Like, how many strangers do you want running around your house? And like, how many of them actually want to come over? It's really hard to get people to come over, do quality work for a tiny job like that. So yes. But actually, the door just opens fine, so I don't need it. So if I couldn't get it done, I would have had to flip the door.
And he asked the question that's on the screen here: what is the estimated watts running at any given time on this tank? So far, we don't know, but we will when you get EB8s in.
Yeah, well, I will tell you the whole thing when we're done, I guess. Yeah, I'm not really sure how many watts total. It'll be. I got 4 20-amp outlets, so it'll probably suck a good amount of juice, but I don't know total yet.
Lucas asks, so this is using Schedule 80 fittings and Schedule 40 colored pipe. Yeah, I think we talked about this one in our plumbing mistakes. In this one is Schedule 80 and Schedule 40 work together. It's all about the inside diameter, though.
Yeah, so Schedule 40 and 80 are kind of loose terms in plumbing, I guess. I mean, and
thickness of the pipes.
Thickness of the pipe, but I think that red stuff.
It's like furniture grade?
It might be it might not actually be PVC. I'm not sure. I had to go check again. But yeah, it is that we're definitely using Schedule 80 fittings on it with the red colored pipe. And like we've used it, that blue and gray. I've used it, that combination. And I know some people will try to use like, ABS to PVC glue. We just use normal PVC glue and I've never had a problem.
Yep. Let's see. Clayton asks, can the UV be set horizontally if you don't have room to position it vertically? Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was one of the things, like we debated, like the first day, all it was 8 hours of debate of where these two things are going to go.
Yeah.
And you can do it horizontally.
But you'd have to have the things stand up like this, which now present a plumbing problem to get down into them.
And a lot of people just simply won't care that it looks as aesthetically pleasing as we put effort into it. But I mean, this is going on YouTube and you guys are sharing it. It's fun and cool, So here's the thing, is you can definitely put it up, and we've had installs where we've done it. I think we did it that way in the XXL 750.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And so it just has to go up. So the main thing you're concerned about
that
is
whole chamber with water.
Airlocks.
Yeah.
Right? So airlocks, when the water goes in, the air goes out the top. If you flipped it down and went down, the air would just get stuck in there and it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Water just travel across the bottom. So yeah, but remember, I got ball valves. I may have a flow sensor. The flow sensor in many cases isn't required. You can just drain a little bit of your tank and then like time how much, how long it takes to fill a 1 gallon bucket and do the math on how many gallons an hour that is.
Yeah.
And most people would probably do it that way if you don't have an apex or a flow meter, and like it'd be just fine.
Yep.
That's how I would have done it without before the flow sensor, and I would have been just happy with that as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you use RO water or tap water for the leak test?
Okay, so what I used is groundwater, well water that has gone through 2 giant bins of catalytic carbon that's been reactivated with hydrogen peroxide periodically as it goes through the 2, then through my water softener as well. So it's like softened, purified water, but not perfect. But I'm able to fill it up inside of 3 hours instead of 3 days. And it's actually going to be much quicker because you're going to learn a kind of RO system I have in a minute, or probably if not next week, the week after. But we didn't have days or even a whole day to wait to fill it, because it's been 4 days, and the tolerance of my family and my kids are like forgetting who I was at that point. So we need to fill it up and get it to leak. So it's just that. But we'll drain it back out, and it'll be just fine.
X-Jet, marine grade birchwood, non-sealed?
I don't know the answer to the sealed question, or if it's birchwood or not. It is coated when we put that, there's a plastic that goes over the top of it when it's done. So I'm not sure the answer to that question. I will say that, dude, Kyle came to, I asked for that stand, and it was produced in 3 days.
Yeah,
turned it around and shipped it. It was such a miracle, man. So there's a couple of things I think in hindsight would have been really awesome. One, probably would have put little plastic feet on the bottom of it, a bunch of them, so it keeps it off the ground. Mm-hmm. But in 3 days, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You turn it around as fast as possible. There's always a couple of things you wish you would have done a little differently, but in terms of, I was blown away, so I had no complaints here.
William Taylor wants to know if Jeremy used primer on the joints.
Okay, so this is a good question, actually, because I've done some pretty big plumbing projects where I failed at it early on. This is when I did those giant frag tanks in my basement.
Oh, yeah.
And then they had leaks, and I'm cutting hundreds of dollars worth of plumbing and hours of work apart because it developed a leak. And then I read about best practices, and best practices is cut it super square, and then use the primer, get it nice and soft first, and get all the burrs off with some sandpaper, and do all the steps. And when I started doing that, I started getting leaks were a thing of the past.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everybody has a different experience, but I never had a leak again.
You did it properly.
Knock on wood, I never had a solvent leak since then.
Yeah.
And that's why I just do it that way. I take the time to do it that way. Now, Jeremy, as somebody who did this for a living,
it's a different approach.
Yeah, a little more fast and furious. And you and I are measuring 1/16 of an inch.
Yeah.
Quarters
only. Quarters are nothing.
I think the quarter in most. There's a balance, because it takes 5 times as long to do it that way, and I'm not doubting the results in the end here, right?
Yeah.
So what he does though is different than me. I'm always really nervous about getting the glue inside of the valves and glue inside of everything, so I'm real stingy about the glue or the solvent. And he just gobs it in there, man. Slops it in there, gets it everywhere, makes sure that there's plenty. That is the solution, and it works. So it really doesn't matter. So he didn't use any primer.
Yeah.
He just used gobs of glue, and there's 8 million of these things, and they were really hard to go places to get at, and it works. So I don't know. I think that means permission to do it whatever way you want. Personally, if I was doing every last step of it myself, this is the one area where I just stop and slow down and go methodical. But I think I'm maybe the rarity in that case.
Yeah.
And there's lots of ways to skin the cat, I guess.
Let's see. What plastic does it says what plastic does not deform with moisture for the lid?
So I think it's polycarbonate is what most people use, and there might be other options. Hopefully people can chime in. But polycarbonate, so what happens with acrylic is if I put acrylic over it, the acrylic side will absorb the water and the other side won't, and so then it bends up. And so glass obviously won't do that. And so you could probably just snap off a piece of glass and then get some sandpaper and scratch, do the sides. Depends if you're going to see it or not, I guess, But polycarbonate is probably, I don't know if
go to
that.
a glass shop and kind of get a nice, just tell them your dimensions and get a nice piece of glass done.
I don't know
probably
the answer.
Relatively cheap too.
Oh yeah, you could probably get it just milled out pretty quick. Maybe PVC sheet. I don't know. You'd have to. Other people would probably know the answer to that question. I'm not sure.
Let's see here. Kevin wants to know, how are you going to prevent the intake of the closed loop from sucking in fish, sand, etc.?
Oh, okay. So
halfway up the tank.
I'm going to build a strainer, or I'm going to buy a strainer.
Yeah.
I'm going to test what that does to head pressure on it. I don't really know the answer to that. If it doesn't work, I'm going to work with one of my 3D printing buddies, and we'll find a contraption. Maybe we'll even sell it if it works out great. Hopefully the lifeguard ones that just kind of screw in there will work. If it doesn't, and then the output, I don't think I'm gonna put anything. I put my hand in there, and there's definitely a lot of water coming out. But because it comes out of such a big hole, it just disperses. Yeah. And we purposely put the exit point on the side where it doesn't blast a portion of the aquascape. So if it doesn't bother anything, I think on the output, I'm just going to leave it alone. But in the input, I'll probably use a lifeguard strainer, or we'll have something custom printed.
Did you caulk between the wall and the floor?
I caulk between the wall and the floor. No, I did not. Yeah, so I think some people had suggested that you put in a bead of silicone or caulk down in there. And, you know, in hindsight, I guess that'd probably be a pretty good idea. I'm not sure. I mean, you always think there's not going to be water getting around. There'll probably be water. Yeah. I'd be curious I might do that actually. So, you know, I have to drain all the water out of this thing.
Drain it out, yeah, which allows you now to pull it away and run a bead of caulk.
So I had to drain all the water out because I'm going to start with RODI water in the actual tank. This was just leak test. So thank you for that actually, because I think I probably will run a bead of that caulk when we're done down there. And I also would like to, there's like a little LED light thing I'd like to switch that's back there as well. So now that I think about it. So hey, thank you very much for that tip. Who was that? Kelly. Hey, you're the man. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, got a few more.
Yeah, a couple more here. Let's see. Are you going to keep the light? How are you going to keep the light out of the overflow box? And I think that solution's probably like smoked glass or.
How am I going to keep the light out of the overflow box? Oh.
So if you have Felix build you something for it, he'll just make sure that you can block it out or black it out or smoke it out or do something to it to keep.
You know, I hadn't gotten that far. We're going to build a hood for it. And I haven't 100% decided what lighting option is going to be, and so I haven't really got there. But maybe I'll use a smoked, because you don't want algae and stuff growing in there.
Right.
That's correct. Maybe I'll use a smoked glass then for the top of it, or a black, plastic for the lid. But maybe the hood design will actually block the light from coming in. Yeah. So I hadn't thought about that quite yet. So thank you again.
Let's see. Trickman says, but how much does it cost so far?
Oh, I don't know. It's going to cost a lot.
You said in the last couple episodes, you're purposely not calculating the cost.
I'm going to calculate it though, because I think it's actually kind of valuable. Yeah. I mean, and the reality is the whole thing in the end could cost you a third of what it ends up really costing. If you make a couple of different decisions, like obviously you don't need that expensive of a sump or tank or whatever. Yeah. But it's going to add up pretty fast. And a lot of people are out there like, well, yeah, Ryan gets great deals. Great deals being like Reef Savvy gave me the tank, right? I mean, I've been friends with him for a really long time, and business, I don't know, I don't sell his tanks or anything, but I don't know. I just know him for a long time. He's helped me out, and I help him out when I can, and I don't know. So yeah, it's definitely not an inexpensive thing, but I think at the end, I'm going to ask all these people what they charge for all this stuff and all of it, and compile it all together and share the big number. But my guess is not only just the equipment, but there's some stuff I've already bought. You're going to see in the next episode, I bought a $10,000 whole house generator for my house. And I felt like there was no other option almost, because I found out that in my neighborhood, when I moved in there, I talked to the neighbor, and he's like, yeah, when power goes out here, it goes out for 2 to 3 days.
Because it takes, because it takes forever to get them back.
Yeah.
Just by the nature where you live.
2 to 3, I never lived anywhere like that. He's like, yeah, the trees are so overgrown, they've come down, and in a storm, and because there's so few people here, they over the last on the list to fix. Oh, that's terrible. So actually, man, it gets really expensive fast, but also fun, man. I feel like this is we're putting it all together. I don't know, man.
You're planning for 15 plus years. I mean, the upfront cost is worth it in the long run.
Man, I don't know. I want this more than I want a new kitchen or whatever. I don't care. And so I spent my whole life, working in the industry and having, reef tanks and diving in. And if we're gonna do a tank in my house, let's pour our heart and souls into it. So I don't know. We'll see.
This is a good lead-in question for what you're going to see next too, and you just mentioned the generator. So Dev here asks, plans for battery backup. Consider a DIY with a high-capacity 200 amp-hour battery. Voltage boosters if necessary for non-Ecotech products. So this gets into that whole home generator, battery backup, and what we're talking about next week.
Yeah, so all electricity is next week. So we got a cool new thing here I think we're going to do is what you can do is make sure, a lot of people ask, like, how do you sign up for this stuff? Like I missed the notifications or whatever, right? So we're going to create the next week's right now so you can go see it.
As soon as I walk out of here.
As soon as you walk out of here. But so if you're watching this afterward, you're going to be able to see a link here that's going to pop up, and just go hit this little bell, and all you got to do is, it's not the bell actually, you just go find the set reminder on our page and hit it, and you will now know, it will tell you next week when this is coming up. If you go on to click on that page, there's also actually a link that you can set a reminder right there as well.
There too,
and so we will see you next week, and I think it's going to be electrical, not just the outlets in the wall, but we're going to talk about the generator, how we got it done. We're going to talk about how do you do reef-proof electrical for a tank like this. So we'll see you next week. All right, thank you very much.